Professor Umbridge emailed me like maybe the day after the deadline for submitting an abstract and said, oh, I'm so sorry, I missed the deadline. I just, didn't realize I've been busy. I'll see you next year. And I was like, oh, not so fast, ma'am, not so fast. Let's make you an invited speaker, and you will lead off the lineup, because we can't imagine a Harry Potter academic conference without Dr. Satterley. So without further ado, I will introduce the title of the talk. I take umbrage with the stain, healing Potterheads with CON-nection.
May I take it away? Fabulous. Hello, children. It's so good to see all of you. I am so happy to see all of your bright, shining boxes. I mean faces, except not really. All staring up at me with adoration. And for those of you whom I know, it's so very good to not really see you. But for those of you who don't know me, well, it's a pleasure. I can say that I sometimes can be a handful, as evidenced by Karen and Patrick's handling of me from time to time. Just ask Karen the time when I hit the baby grand piano. It was magical. But you'll have a good time, I do hope. Unlike previous years, where Professor Umbridge slays you with a lovely PowerPointless presentation, this year I'm going to do something quite different. I'm going to share some of my own experience, magic, and hope. And I'm going to be vulnerable. And while I find Madame Pomfrey's style and taste less than fashion forward, I do admire her work of healing. And it is in this aspect of her work that I wish to embellish upon here today. Forgive some of the academic manner in this lecture, children, but I am a professor. Since J.K. Rowling's 2020's educational decrees, or tweets, that firmly established her prejudicial TransExclusionary Radical Feminist position, she systemically created a sociologically discursive phenomena within and among the lesbian, gay, bisexual, transgender, queer, intersex, and asexual, or LGBTQIA+ Harry Potter fandom. And as noted in my 2022 panel, the queer half-blood fan who remains in the fandom copes with what Dederer in her 2022 book, Monsters, A Fandom's Dilemma, calls the stain. The stain is like a proverbial scarlet letter for half-bloods. It reflects a stigma that marks them both inside and out, with a very public curse for remaining in the fandom. This is especially poignant for queer half-bloods and other fans who come from traditionally disenfranchised groups. In other words, this stain reinforces oppressive stigma and urges one viable alternative for queer half-bloods: the closet. The closet, an image used to conceptualize a space for containing a deeply held secret, presents an even more poignantly alternative for queer half-bloods. Going into the Potterverse closet to remain a fan may cause for some an internal rupture of integrity, a psychological developmental arrest, and even a traumatic response. It's been said that sunlight is the best of disinfectants, and coming out of the closet is often thought of as a healing experience for many closeted queer people in specific circumstances. Mind you, that's not for everyone. There are some circumstances where coming out is actually a danger to that queer person. So it's not a unilateral recommendation. Very individual. Sorry, I'm a social worker as well, and I have to put that in there. And yet herein lies the horcrux. Coming out as a half-blood fan risks at best condemnation and canceling, and at worst, losing queer community. It is well established that seeking out others who have comparable lived experiences or hold similar beliefs can be healing of stigma, isolation, and other psychosocial symptoms of distress. This concept by Yalom, known as universality, is one that can be explored within the half-blood fandom. And so, dear children, today I wish to share some of my own experience in two specific cons. This one, the Chestnut Hill Harry Potter Academic Conference in all its magic, and another that I joyously attend for a number of years known as MystiCon. It is in these two cons wherein I have experienced healing of both the stain and my own personal internal stain. Please bear with me and let me explain. But before I do, I'd like to acknowledge the sensitivity of some of what I'm going to share here, which includes some discussion about addiction. If you find yourself, as my dear friends, the millennials say, activated, I love that term, please do what you need to do to take care of yourself in whatever way that works for you. It was October 2016 when I first descended upon Chestnut Hill for the conference. Admittedly, I was nervous, but so excited. I posted on all my socials about it and bragged about how doing Harry Potter scholarship, something I've been obsessed with for many years, was actually becoming part of my career. I did a presentation on my Harry Potter course titled, "I solemnly swear that I am up to good, the spellcraft of social work, Harry Potter, and social justice." I had a magical time meeting new witches and wizards and magical non-binary lovelies, and new friendships budded, except for one thing. I was, well, severely hungover. And on the surface, that might seem kind of laughable, but addiction has ravaged my family for generations. And as it turns out, I was no exception. You see, I'm an alcoholic. Having grown up in an alcoholic household, I never wanted to drink. It wasn't until college that I first imbibed, even then only a handful of times. And doing so released this never-ending codependent yoke of the closet to be authentic. Drinking was a freedom that I had never known. It was a potion that made me not care that I wasn't straight, that I wasn't masculine, and that I wasn't perfect. Once I came out, I was introduced to a magical world of rainbows, appletinis, unicorns, tea dance specials, glitter, gay brunch, drag queens, mimosas, after party, AIDS fundraisers, happy hour, magic, and men. I was literally drunk on queerness. Alcohol was entwined in gayness, in sissy boy celebration, and in loving queerness. Intellectually, I completely understand it. Gay bars are considered, after all, sacred spaces, and rightly so, in our communities, where queers can be, well, queer, without hesitation, without reservation, without explanation. And I enjoyed them thoroughly. I love the diversity of some bars where my friends could greet me with a kiss, where my trans siblings could be comfortable using a public restroom without fear, where a leather daddy could love his boy, and where every queen was not white. Having grown up in a small town, lily white, straight, cisgender USA, everything about it was magical to me. Except it wasn't. Alcohol, a social lubricant, granted permission with a price, and that price became steep. They say that alcoholism is a progressive disease, and I believe that because I lived that. At some point, I crossed that invisible line from drinking socially to drinking alcoholically. I share this not out of a need for attention or a narcissistic wound, despite how I'm dressed, but rather just my own truth. I've tried for a number of years to drink like a muggle, drinking only on the weekends, only drinking wine, having water in between drinks, and white knuckling it on dry days. Winky and I partied on occasion. Nothing worked. I felt cursed, like I'd had a shot of unicorn blood in my Cape Cod. So I drank and I suffered and I shook and I was hungover a lot. And yes, it got worse, but I got some help and stopped. Now, dear children, you may be asking, what in the world does this have to do with healing the stain in Harry Potter? Good question. I do ask for your patience. Bones are not grown in an hour. It takes some time and discomfort. And then I heard of another biannual con called MistyCon, held in Laconia, New Hampshire on Lake Winnipesaukee. Well, after looking at the programming from the last few years, I jumped at the chance and submitted my presentation abstract and was accepted. You see, folks who struggle with addiction and stop often use something to fill themselves up with other passions, and Harry Potter was part of that for me. And I went to MistyCon, presented my panel that went swimmingly, and again met magical people. But while I was not drinking, I wasn't really sober. I missed alcohol almost like a lover. It was unnerving. I impatiently waited until October 2017 and presented the pedagogy of fandom, using the Harry Potter fandom to captivate, motivate, and advocate in social work education at the Chestnut Hill Conference. And once again, I reconnected with friends, embraced the magic, and I learned from all of you. And upon returning to the Muggle world, I found it boring. I was lonely. I didn't understand why being sober was so damn dull. My work, while I enjoyed teaching, had become monotonous and less creative. And Misty wasn't being held in 2018 since it was a biannual con. It's been said that my mind is like a bad neighborhood. It's not really safe to go there alone. And I isolated myself, became exhausted with the boredom of not drinking, and quite easily convinced myself that I could drink safely. Alcoholism almost seemingly cast an imperious curse upon me. And in 2018, I relapsed, and it was messy. I managed to get myself to the Chestnut Hill Conference once again for a magical time when I, ironically enough, spoke on Dumbledore's army, leadership and resistance and authenticity. I shared profound parts of my own history of queerness there and actually loved doing it. And the response from you all was genuine and wonderful. The only thing was, I was experiencing withdrawals while I was speaking. I shook and I sweat like Harry Potter after a Voldemort nightmare in Order of the Phoenix. I almost hadn't come because I was having such anxiety before the conference. Alcohol will do that to you. And then it was 2019, MistyCon. Professor Umbridge was born out of a demand for social justice, and she grew inside me like a big pink bogart that had just needed some laughter to blossom. In full drag, I slayed the stage and built some amazing friendships while doing so. The challenge for me is that anxiety had become so bad that I had to refrain from any drinking at least 10 days before any event in order to speak publicly without having a panic attack. Never before had anxiety been so debilitating, and I feared for my job. One that regularly calls for public speaking would be in jeopardy. But the night before I presented, I couldn't sleep for very good reasons, and I wrote this. This is the hard part. At MistyCon 2019 on Friday, the 19th of July, it's 3 a.m. and I have not slept. I've not slept because I'm suffering auditory hallucinations from withdrawals from alcohol, and I'm terrified. My psychiatrist taught me that it's called alcohol hallucinosis, something I studied and teach myself, or some such unpronounceable word. It involves hearing things that basically are not discernible to others. Notice I didn't say that they were real because Merlin's beard, they were very real to me. I've heard things late at night on and off for a year or so now. Usually it's my late cat Durwood meowing from the heart of the house at the top of the stairs where spirits and ghosts in our home dwell. Or believe it or not, music. Much of the music appears quite pleasant, actually. Collections of beats, rhythms, tones that craft a lovely melody, but I wake up in the morning and it's gone. I lay here tonight in a hotel at what's supposed to be a super fun con where I connect with my Harry Potter peeps, and I'm just laying here in terror of music and meows. I went to bed at 1 a.m. tonight. New episodes of Winona Earp were on Netflix, so I went to bed late. And then I heard soft cries in the distance, Winona Sue, Winona Sue, Winona Sue, and they began to sing it. Now, please know that Winona Sue is the name of my golf cart at a campsite where I own in the Poconos in Pennsylvania, which to me seemed to indicate that alcohol hallucinosis had an intention to unhinge me with my own mind, like a malevolence. And I cowered in fear under the covers. Winona Sue was coming from somewhere far to my left at night, but then I heard a cacophony of almost party chatter far off to my right, and I literally strained to discern what they were saying. Suddenly, one voice rose above the rest, hissing like the basilisk slithering through the pipes at Hogwarts. I will kill Brent. I will kill Brent. I love me. I love my life and my husband and my kitties and my family and my friends and more. I wanted to laugh at the party crowd maniacally and say, "You cannot touch me." And I heard a tap on the window in my hotel room. Like something or someone threw a rock at it. I jumped. I rationalized that hotels often were making weird, creaky sounds, but I questioned my own reality. I'd never done that before. I reached into my heart to Don, my husband. I recalled something he said to me years ago when we were discussing my drinking. You can bet it created hardships in our marriage. Remember, honey, he said, you are magic. You embody it. You embrace it. And I immediately invoked the Harry Potter protection spell that I regularly cast about my family and friends near and far, and my campsite and my cons and my cottage. And I stretched out my magic and shielded myself with a light blue shield. It's not lost on me that such a light blue is the color of my Patronus. And I cast saying, sorry, you may be in my mind, but you are not in my heart. And I am the witch of emotion. You cannot touch me. You cannot unhinge me. You cannot destroy me. But the MistyCon organizers had announced that it was the last MistyCon, and I left there feeling adrift like a ghost in the Department of Mysteries. My apologies, children, if this is too much, but I must not tell lies. This is my truth. My very life was in jeopardy. In November of 2019, I hit bottom. I'm not going to go into the details of that because privacy is actually a thing. But then I chose a magical life of sobriety for which I am grateful beyond words. And there is no way I could have taken those steps without those in my life, including all of you, who are unabashedly loving me beyond what I could ever have imagined. They know who they are, and I'm grateful beyond words. And now my recovery involves disentangling my happiness from my happy hour. It's just about this time that COVID hit and J.K. Rowling assaulted the fandom with her TERF hatred. I found it quite tumultuous as I sought to navigate her betrayal and the emergence of the stain within my own sobriety. She shattered the fandom with a tweet? How? And we let this stand? Can we stop it? As I mentioned earlier, it's often said that people who struggle with addiction need to build a life where it's easier not to use. While I agree, I think it's a low bar, no pun intended. I think that for me, I needed to remember who I was before alcoholism. In other words, that sissy boy with the green purse, that sparkly kid who organized his Play-Doh cans so the labels face the right way, that Halloween-obsessed trick-or-treater, that boy who loves to sing and dance in the spotlight, that soft-hearted child whose heart melted when holding a kitty, yeah, him or her. Professor Umbridge exploded inside me, and she became a magic all her own. For almost 4 magical pink years now, I have been sober, happy, and free. Yet the stain lingered. They say the opposite of addiction isn't abstinence, it's connection. And much of my own recovery is finding people who share the struggle on a daily basis. Similarly, within the Potterverse, HalfBloods sought out each other too. The 2022 Chestnut Hill Harry Potter conference helped me in ways I cannot describe, despite my best attempts here. In the last 2 years, we took on the TERF apocalypse full freaking frontal, and it healed parts of this half-blood. And then, as if by some magical room of requirement, those proverbial doors flew open, announcing that MistyCon was coming back in the summer of 2023. My bags were packed, my broom was loaded. To describe the healing I personally experienced there is difficult to quantify, not that it could or should be boiled down to a heady formula. But I arrived a day early at the Margate Hotel where it was held and had the most perfect room on the lake that I proceeded to decorate profusely with pink flowers, lights, and drag paraphernalia of all kind. Umbridge's office indeed. Turns out the leadership team at Misty had a last-minute cancellation of their MC of festivities. And because of my Chestnut Hill Harry Potter connections, they asked me to assume some of those duties. First, I said, no. Are you kidding? I jumped at the chance. I said, yes, gladly. I hosted some events, pulled out some magical drag performances, attended some panels of queer joy, feeling, and thinking, and presented my own work. And it was there that I first realized that Harry Potter cons had been a parallel process of authoring my own sobriety as well as actively healing the stain. In the vein of Yalom's universality, I heard HalfBloods share about their own struggles with the stain and the impact it had on their friendships and their sense of selves. Our connections opened up a sense of shared bleeding, of shared cleansing, of shared scarring, and of shared healing. I built new friendships. I renewed old ones. I reveled in fanfic naughtiness. You know what I'm talking about. I raised my wand in honor of those who passed, and we miss them. And the only voices I heard were those of loving half-bloods who laughed and danced and cast spells of queer joy and love over a lake that shimmered with the ripples of the giant squid. And the stain? Well, don't you know? It washed away. Thank you.